Hey everybody, I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with our weekly lecture series. Our lecture is sponsored today by Anonymous. Anonymous sponsors a lot of lectures. And even though Anonymous didn't want us to let you know who it was, I'm going to tell you who it's not. It's not Ted Danson, and it's not Larry David. Now, they're also anonymous, but a lot of people are named Anonymous. Anyway, this lecture topic is on very specific variation in the Caro-Kann. It's got two subtitles. It's the Caro-Kann Advanced Variation, Tall Variation. So it's a variation within the advanced variation. Now, I started off the lecture on the Wikipedia article on the Caro-Kann Defense, which is very thorough. So if you're thinking of playing the Caro-Kann with either white or black, even though it sounds stupid to say so, I've been known to say stupid things. Sometimes I have to take them back. You should look at the Wikipedia article because it basically tells you every variation both sides can play and explains it a little bit, and it tells you the players who play the variation. And that's one thing I like when I study chess is when I learn a new opening, I want to know what super grandmasters play this opening because they've studied it a lot and I haven't. And then I look at their games, and especially if they have a good score, if they score 60, 70%, then I can just steal all their ideas and I can play the opening well. Okay, so we have to go to near the bottom of the Wikipedia article because they start out with other stuff, main line variations. You see, I told you it was thorough. And the advanced variation has its own little tiny article where they talk about players, played both sides, famous games. Then in blue here, which I've highlighted, another less popular but aggressive line is the tall variation, H4, H5, popularized by Mikhail Tal. And H5 isn't the only move, but it's probably the best move in my opinion. Some people don't agree. There's actually a big argument what the best move is. So I want to warn everybody, which I try to do every lecture, but I don't always do it. If you play an opening, you're not really playing it. You and your opponent are playing it. So if you're like, when I have black, I play the Sicilian. Well, you play the Sicilian if your opponent plays E4. Your opponent plays knight F3 on move 1, or D4, or C4, or B3, or F4. You don't play the Sicilian. And if you're like, I play the Nimzo Indian with black, I mean, that means that 15% of your games will be Nimzo Indians. The other 85% won't be. So this is the same thing with the tall variation. If you've decided you want to play with black, and I assume the sponsor's intentions are to play it with white, because the tall variation played by tall is white playing H4, and the sponsor didn't say differently. That's not going to stop me from showing a black win. If you're going to play it with white or black, the tall variation of the Caro-Kann, it's not going to happen very often, because if you play E4, your opponent has to play C6. And if your opponent plays C6, they're almost certainly going to play D5, almost certainly. And here, C5 has become more popular the last 20 years than it was before that. The Botvinnik-Karls variation, which I've already done a lecture on. And the most common move is bishop F5. So if I'm white and I play E4 every game, I'm going to get the tall variation of the Caro-Kann, like, I don't know, 10 to 15% of the time. The other times, I'm going to face E5 on move 1, French defense, the Pierce, the Scandi, the Sicilian, the Alekhine. I mean, not the only opening, the Caro-Kann. I've played the Caro-Kann with both sides, but mainly with black. And in this position, I've played bishop f5 and c5 equally. So my opponent doesn't know what I'm going to do. Okay, so 35, 40 years ago, everybody played knight c3 and then g4. And then Nigel Short became one of the top players in the world. And Nigel always played knight f3, bishop e2. So that became the most popular. And some crazy players played g4 here, which does not have a good reputation. But I play it in blitz and bullet chess because it's hyper aggressive. And usually my opponents don't know the theory. And a lot of my opponents, when I play on stream, are much lower rated than me, and G4 poses them problems they don't like. And I've only had this position once in my chess career in slow chess, and I was black. And I'm going to show that game at the end. And we're going to start with a game that no other lecture would ever show, but I have a very specific reason for showing this game. This is the game MVL, better known as Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, versus Varusian Akobian. The reason I'm showing this game is I was sitting 9 feet away from this game when it was played because Akobian was my teammate. And it was the World Cities Team Championship in Al Ain, UAE in 2012. Al Ain is like 45, 50 miles from Dubai. And I've been to Al Ain twice, once as a coach in the World Youth and once as a player. And we lost this match, and I think we got eliminated. I think this was our elimination match. However, I did not lose. I was paired up about 120 rating points, and I drew my opponent. But I think we had 2 losses and 2 draws. So we lost the match. And this is the game MVL Akobian. And this was before MVL was MVL. Because this game was played 13 years ago. Now you're like, MVL, he's one of the top 10, top 20 players in the world. He's playing in Super GM tournaments. He's topping the list in World Blitz and World Rapid Championships. But in 2012, that wasn't the case. And this game really impressed me. And 2013-14 is sort of when MVL became MVL and everybody realized he was top 10 in the world. Although we knew he was good in 2012. And I was really impressed this game because MVL just kept moving his pawns. And I thought, you can't do that in chess. Over the last 13 years, I've learned that's what every Super Grandmaster does. So, what do I know? I played chess in a different era. We didn't do that. Okay, so get ready because in the following 5 games of this lecture, White's going to move a lot of pawns. Okay, H4 is the beginning. Now, the point of H4 is very simple. If Black plays the sort of obvious move E6, then Black is already losing. Truth hurts. And the reason Black is losing is because we played H4. If we play Knight C3, which used to be a common move, or Knight F3, which still is a common move, then Black usually plays E6. However, H4, which is the topic of our lecture, tall variation, you can't play E6. Play E6, G4 wins a piece. The bishop is trapped. The truth hurts. So you can go to G6, then E4, then your bishop's trapped. Or you can do it the other way around, go to E4, and then go to G6. Bishop is trapped the same way. So Black can't play E6, and Black doesn't have a lot of moves that make a lot of sense. So the moves that make sense are thinking white's going to play g4, and I'm going to have to move my bishop. So the two moves that grandmasters play with black are h6 and h5. And then after h6 or h5, after h5, there is no g4. And after h6, my bishop can hide on h7, and then I can play e6 and play like a normal Caro-Kann. And we're going to look at games with both. The Wikipedia article, which I do not agree with, which doesn't mean that I'm right, it means that I'm probably wrong, says that h5 is part of the tall variation. That doesn't make any sense because the tall variation is white playing h4. What black does here doesn't make it the tall variation. It's named after what white's doing. So I don't understand why it says h5 is the tall variation. Okay, so in this game, Akobian played h6. And MVL couldn't stop moving his pawns. He forgot that he had minor pieces. So he played g4. And Akobian went back to d7, which is a common idea to make it look like a French defense, playing e6, c5, knight c6, and white's played these moves, which may or may not be good. And most people in this particular position play bishop d7 because they're worried after bishop h7 that e6 is going to come, and they're going to have a funky pawn structure, and white's going to have e5 for the knight. White can play g5, basically trap all of these pieces. This piece can't move, this piece can't move, this piece can go to f6, except I play g5 and then it can't. So, or I could wait till you go there and gain a tempo. Okay, so a lot of people won't play bishop h7 because they're worried about their bishop getting stuck and e6 happening. So bishop d7, then it's been half a move since MVL moved a pawn, so he played h5. And actually, h5 is an important move because black wants to play h5. Then white's position doesn't make a lot of sense. g5 gives away the f5 square, and then the knight can go to f5, c5, knight c6, queen b6, pawn's weak. So white plays h5 because then black can't play h5, and white says, your pieces are all terrible. And if you castle queenside, that seems crazy. If you castle kingside, that seems crazier. Because white's already played g4 and h5. And black castling queenside, black castling kingside seems virtually impossible. How's black going to castle kingside? How are those pieces going to get out of there? Okay. So white's playing hyper aggressive. Black played e6. White played knight f3, the first development of a piece. During the game, I expected white would play f4 because white has only moved pawns. But MVL moves a piece now. c5. And basically, this is an advanced French where white's up tempi, and the tempi are g4 and h5. And you could argue that's good for white. If black castles kingside, I'll get checkmated. Or you could argue those moves are silly. Black's going to play knight c6, queen b6, attack the d4 pawn. What does g4 and h5 have to do with the center? Okay, so that's the battle of ideas. That's why we play chess. Queen b6, bishop e2, knight c6. Just looks like an advanced French, except white has those pawns advanced on the king side. Castles. And again, it seems like whatever black does with their king is going to be bad. Black can't attack white's king because black's pieces are on the queen side. So there's no getting at the white king. So he played f6, attacking the center. A lot of times in the French defense, especially in the advanced variation, we play knight e7, knight f5. But we're not doing that here because there's a pawn on g4. So black knight, no good. So f6, attacking the center. knight h4, MVL says, you weaken the g6 square, and I'm going to play knight g6. So Akobian said, no, I'm going to defend g6. Knight a3, the knight wants to go either to b5 and then d6, or the knight can go to c2 and defend the d pawn. Either way is good. Take on d4, take on f6, knight b5, sacrificing a pawn, because if black takes the pawn, knight d6 check, king d8, knight f7 check wins the rook in the corner. So it's not really a pawn sacrifice, because black can't allow knight d6 check. So plays rook g8, and he says, haha, I'm attacking your king, and now knight f7 check doesn't win my rook, because my rook's not there. So rook g8 is an interesting move. C takes d4, materials equal. And we have this crazy position that doesn't make a lot of sense, where neither king seems safe. And the engine says it's about equal. Black castled queenside. Bishop e3. Kicking the knight out. And MVL doesn't move his knight. He sacrifices his knight, because then he'll have the open C file and the open A file, and his bishop can go to f4 and protect b8. Now, if we're interested in the fans have rights, then black should take on b5, and we should see if white has enough compensation for a piece. Obviously, MVL thought he did, because he's got the two open files to the black king. He's got bishop f4. He's got queen c2, rook c1. And that looks like good compensation for a piece. Akobian thought so. He didn't take the knight. He played king b8, getting his king off the c file. a5 attacking the queen. Rook takes g4 check, sacrificing the exchange. Probably a move Akobian didn't think about very much. And the idea is, in this position, I'm trying to go back. If I play bishop f4 check, and the idea is king a8, bishop c7, that's a good idea. Then black would definitely play e5. And e5 is sufficiently protected. Now the bishop's hanging, the knight's hanging, and I'm too old for this position. Although I wasn't too old when the game was being played, because this game's 12 years old. 13 years old. So MVL says, I have an idea. I'll play a5 attacking the queen. The queen has nowhere to go. It's trapped. So he's going to take my pawn. Now his knight isn't protecting e5 anymore. So now I can play bishop f4 check. And if the king moves, I have bishop c7 attacking every piece. And if you play e5, your knight's not on c6. So I can take on e5, and I'm threatening to take on f6 with discovered check and take your knight and so forth. And that's very complicated. So again, Akobian either trusted MVL or thought that's not good for black, and he sacrificed the exchange. Rook takes g4 check. And the idea is the bishop is defending the knight, and it's also protecting g4, and we can't move our king because rook takes knight check. So he took the rook, and he took the knight, and white's pawn structure is a little iffy. Black has a big center, nice center pawns, and white's attack on the king against the black king seems like it's over. White's pieces are over here. Open G file to white's king. White has 3 isolated pawns, and black has a pawn for the exchange. So very small investment of material for a lot of stuff. And these kind of super complex positions happen all the time in the tall variation. If you like these positions with either color, this is your opening. If you're like me and you like boring, stable, pawn structures the same, then you're not going to like this opening. Okay, queen d2 makes a battery against the h6 pawn. He connects his rooks, and he defends his a pawn. So all-purpose move. e5, Akobian plays in the center. Also has a discovered attack on the bishop. So they trade bishops. Rook c1. The rook wasn't doing anything on f1. It's on open file on c1. Maybe we'll play rook c5 and win the queen. Knight c8, opening up the diagonal for the bishop, stopping rook c5. Knight g6. Finally, after playing knight h4 a long time ago, gets to play knight g6. Bishop b4, attacking the queen and the a pawn. Queen d1. Knight goes to d6. Black's pieces look pretty harmonious. Now, the reason MVL wins this game is very strange, because in the opening, white played h4, and then 2 moves later played h5, and then black castled queenside, and white was trying to attack on the queen side with knight b5 and a4 and those kind of moves. Now, white's like, hey, all your pieces are on the queen side. I have a pawn on h5. Once I take the h6 pawn, I can promote my h-pawn. What are these pieces going to do about it? I wonder if he actually said that. He probably said it in French and nobody could understand. So he takes on e5. Then he plays queen g4, attacking the rook, getting his queen over to the king side, and then takes on h6. So by taking the h6 pawn, not only does white get past h-pawn, but white regains all the pawns, so now it's 4 pawns each. So black is down to pure exchange. Although I do admit, I like black's center, and I like all of black's pieces. They seem sort of nice. And white says, yeah, your pieces are nice. I'm going to make a queen. Truth hurts. Knight e4, centralizing the knight. Bishop e3, getting out of the way of the h-pawn. Knight d4, centralizing the other knight. Maybe black wants to play knight b3, forking the rooks. Knight takes e5. Knight e2 check. Black wins the exchange back. But in doing so, he loses his center. So now white is a pawn ahead. Black's 2 pawns in the center are gone. And here comes the h-pawn. Bishop takes a5. Materials equal. h6. Uh-oh. Queen e8. Attacking the knight on e5. But not really, because bishop f4 would pin the queen to the king. h7, man, the truth hurts. So now if queen takes, bishop f4 wins the queen. Man, the h-pawn's pretty strong. King a8, threatening the knight. So now if you play bishop f4, if you take the knight next move, and white plays bishop f4, it's not pinning the queen against the king. Unfortunately, king a8 undefends the c8 square, and this queen is overworked. This is one of the more complex overworks you're going to see. And this is why MVL was so good when he was at his peak, because he would play these super complicated games, and he would outcalculate his opponent. The queen is defending c8. The queen is defending h8. The queen is defending f7. That is an overworked queen. And so MVL puts it all together and plays knight f7. And if I remember correctly, and I don't, I think Akobian lost on time here. But it doesn't matter. He might have resigned, because this is a good time to resign. Okay, so I'm threatening to make a queen. I'm also threatening knight takes rook. Then I'll queen later. Queen g8. And the only move that makes any sense as far as I can tell, is queen takes knight. Otherwise, I have all these threats. Okay, now, since your king went to a8, I have rook c8 check. And your rook is defending me from queening, but your rook's going away. So black has two legal moves. That's one of them. Oh, and that's checkmate because the bishop defends a7. Oh, so actually it's checkmate. I thought black could play king a7, then I would take the rook and queen. I forgot that white's mating black because I was concerned about white queening. Well, in that case, we might as well sack our queen if we're going to mate him. And then mate. Also, queen takes knight loses instantly to checkmate. Man, maybe he did resign. I know he was in terrible time trouble. But yeah, you can resign here because there's no move. Man, black's getting checkmated and white's queening. Man, truth hurts. So that's a good example of the tall variation because the game was sort of messy. Both sides were sacrificing material. Both sides have passed pawn. Both kings are exposed. And somehow the better player won. And unfortunately, the better player wasn't on my team. Okay. Now, I did a lot of research to look for Mikhail tall games, since this is the tall variation. And typically, tall was playing, Spassky and Fischer and Botvinnik, and Geller and Capablanca and Morphy. Okay, I probably made those up. So tall wasn't winning a lot of games in the tall variation because his opponents were world champions also. One game I found he won that was in tall-like fashion, which I'm sure was adjourned, and then Pachman analyzed the game in adjournment and said, man, this is bad. Is tall Pachman from Bled, 1961. And I was actually in Bled when I went to Maribor, Slovenia for the World Youth. We made a day trip to Bled and to Ljubljana, which I pronounced wrong, but too bad. I pronounced Bled right. Okay. So tall's white. It's the tall variation, so I have to show a game from tall. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, so it's the same opening, of course. And Pachman played h6 like the last guy. And this is the same as the MVL game. It's still the same, h5. And this was in 1961. So the way tall played in 1961, MVL thought that's still good. Okay, c5, that's not what Akobian played. He played e6. But we transpose. And then tall played f4. If tall had played knight f3, this would actually be following the MVL game from 50 years later. Hard to understand. But tall played f4. He's tall. So. Queen b6, knight f3, knight c6, knight a3, just like MVL played. And if I was a betting man, and I am, I would say that MVL was familiar with this game because MVL plays this opening with white a lot. It's named after tall, so he would have seen some of the seed games that started this variation. He got a similar position where MVL's pawn was on f2. Okay, CD, and castles. Very similar to the MVL game with the Akobian. Knight c2, king b8, and they just develop their pieces. Rook b1, white wants to develop the bishop, but doesn't want b2 to be hanging, and white wants to play b4, a4, rawr. So rook b1 makes sense. b4, b5. And you can see a lot of the tall variation. These two pieces on the back row sort of stay there. They don't have anywhere to go. And one of the reasons tall played b5 was to, continue. But the other reason was to stop knight c6. So the knight can't move, bishop can't move, rook can't move. None of black's pieces can move. White has all the space in the world on the king side, and white also has more space on the queen side. Black has the two bishops, but the worst bishops ever. Okay, g6, trying to get some space on the king side. Knight b3. Here comes the knight to c5. Or a4, a5 is coming. Bishop takes b5, taking the sacrificed pawn. Knight c5. Looks super dangerous. Not only is white threatening b5 bishop, white's threatening knight d7 check, which would get black's queen. So rook takes c5, always sack the exchange. Queen a5 check. Queen a5 check is forced. If you take the pawn, you just lose your bishop. And he has to go into the endgame. And he's down in exchange, but he's threatening bishop takes c5. And black's position is perfectly reasonable, except that he's down the exchange. But he does have a pawn for it. So very similar to the Akobian game. Takes knight d4, threatening not only the obvious knight takes e6, but more importantly, knight takes c6. Because the b pawn is pinned. So knight takes is forced. Tall advances his king in the endgame. Tall has an exchange for a pawn. Tall has a better king. Tall's rooks are well placed. Technically winning endgame. Tall pushes his f pawn. Wants to get a passed pawn. Wants to take on d5. Black defends the d pawn. Threatens the c pawn. Now Tall has two passed pawns. Rook is tied down to the h pawn, which isn't very good. The pawns protect themselves. The black king can't come over. It's funny, the king can't attack the pawns. b6. Rook f1. Here comes the rook. Black gets counterplay with his rook. And this position was move 41. And if I know what that means, and I'm very old, so I know what that means. That means rook f7 was the sealed move. They played like for 5 hours. It's move 41. And now they adjourned the game. That's how you played chess in 1961. And a lot of times, if you look at games played in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the game ends on move 41. Because on move 41, the game's adjourned. The players analyze the game, and they're like, man, this is completely winning. Or, man, this is completely losing. So if this was not adjourned, I don't see black resigning, because, game goes on. But if you analyze the game, and you're like, man, this loses, this loses, this loses. And I would never consider resigning with black, but I did turn the engine on, and the engine says resigning is correct. It says white is +5. And the main variation of the engine was white playing e7 soon, and black taking and being down a rook. That didn't seem good. And the main line was rook a3 check, king e4, rook e3 check, king f4, then, here comes the e pawn. And so the engine also sort of resigns. So that was one of Tall's only victories with his Tall variation, and it was very typical. White pushed all of his kingside pawns, black castle queenside, and then white got big initiative on on the king side and eventually pushed all his pawns. And before black resigned, white is gonna promote those pawns soon. Okay, here's a game between Kramnik and Leko. For you chess historians, this was a world championship match played in 2004. Is that right? Yeah. And Leko was up by 1 point, and Leko needed to draw this game, and Leko's the world champion. If the game was decisive in Kramnik's favor, the match would be tied, and the rules of the match were the reigning champion retains the title if it's tied. So if Kramnik wins, he's the world champion. If Leko draws or wins, he's the world champion. And they played the tall variation of the Caro-Kann. So that's good. H6 again. Kramnik playing all crazy, G4. And then in this position, white's always playing H5. Kramnik played knight D2. He has a different idea in mind. He wants to play knight B3 and stop black from playing C5. And Leko says, I'll play C5 then. Then you can't play knight B3 and stop me. White's up a pawn. Black tries to win the pawn back. White says, no, you can't win the pawn back. And Leko says, look, dude, I'm almost the world champion. I'm taking that pawn. Confusing the audience. Kramnik gets the 2 bishops, but he can't keep his extra piece because it's a fork. So white has the 2 bishops, and white has more space on the king side, but black's position looks pretty solid. They just develop their pieces. Kramnik's like, 2 bishops and extra space on the king side. That's why I'm the world champion. Defends his pawn. Leko goes into the endgame. Leko needs to draw this ending. The engine says white's slightly better. White has more space in the center and king side. They open up the king side. And in this position, Kramnik played a move that I probably wouldn't even think of. He played A4. And I was like, isn't A4 hanging? And I asked the engine says taking on A4 is the best move, but black didn't do that. Then rook C7, and we attack B7 and F7. Then after bishop C6, we can play knight G5. And the idea is we're attacking the F pawn, and if you play rook F8, I can take the F pawn anyway. And then bishop G6 is very annoying. That's pretty annoying. But the engine does take on A4. And then in this position, the engine says black should castle. And white's advantage is held to a minimum, but white is still better. White can win back their B pawn. Leko didn't play takes on A4, which was the best move. Played king D8, which is probably the losing move. The engine hates that move. And the idea is the rook's never coming to C7. But the rooks aren't connected. King is sort of silly here. And now white seizes the initiative. White plays knight G5. Obvious threat. Bishop E8. Very passive from Leko. B5. Knight F4. B6. Kramnik says, but I want to play rook C7. And Leko says, don't play rook C7. I'll play rook C8. Now in this position, black is in a quandary. Black can allow rook C7, which looks terrible for black, or black can play bishop C6 and give up his F pawn. And either way, the truth hurts. Leko decided to give his F pawn away since the H pawn's hanging also. So equal material. White's knight's pretty good. Now, white wants to play rook takes g7, and it looks awfully passive to play rook h7. So Leko played for active defense. And now Leko has a passed a pawn. Leko's the only one with a passed pawn. But Kramnik plays f4 and says, I'm going to play f5, you'll take it, and I'll play e6. So in the tall variation, often white pushes all their pawns on the king's side, and Kramnik did. It just took Kramnik a long time to do it. So this is a very complicated move. Rook a2 check. Again, if we take this, then f5, e6, and white's threatening e7 check. And the knight defends e4, so there's no rook e4 check. That's annoying. Okay, so he plays rook a2 check, rook a3 check, and then now after f5 takes, you can't play e6 because you're in check. Plays f5 anyway, check, takes, king f6, which is better than e6 in this position. If you play e6, rook g4 check, rook takes rook, king e7, and black is the world champion. So king f6 is the only move. Now white's threatening here. White has another threat, which is annoying. Rook c7, rook c8 mate. It's good to be the king. And this reminds me, I was giving a lesson to a student yesterday, and I showed him the famous game, Capablanca Tartakower, and in that game, Capablanca's king was on f6, and Tartakower's king was on the back row, rook was on the 7th, and white won. That student's here right now. Okay, so he played rook g4 and said, let's trade rooks so I can be the world champion. And he said, I have a better idea. I'll checkmate you. Leko played rook h4. Rook c8's not checkmate because of king d7. If Geary was white, the game would end like this, and Leko would be world champion. Man, I scoring off of Geary. Okay, but Kramnik played the better move, leading to checkmate, knight f7 check. And now there actually is a checkmate. Instead of the fake one I was telling you about, this is a real checkmate. Leko resigned, Kramnik retains his title. If king e8, then rook c8 check and rook d8 mate. Unless you're my student, then you play rook back to c7 and then rook d8 mate. Oh, snap. So all Leko needed to do was draw this game and he would be the world champion. And instead he does commentary with Judah Polgar. So that's what happened as a direct consequence of this game. I guess that's okay too. Okay, here's the game Svidler Nakamura. Played in 2010 in Amsterdam. And Nakamura played h5, which we haven't seen yet in the lecture. c4. Most grandmasters play bishop d3 here, but c4 is okay. Knight c3. And you can see white isn't getting the usual pushing all the pawns here. They develop their pieces. Nakamura decides he's gonna save his pawn. And this is really cool, except I think it's been played before. If it had never been played before, it'd be even cooler. So this queen's on b3, defending the c4 pawn, and it's not clear how white wins the c4 pawn back, and white plays a really cool move here. Oh, it wasn't knight e4, it was the next move. I was one move away. Knight d5, and then rook h3. I thought rook h3 was really cool. Man, now white's not kidding. White's threatening knight takes knight, then resigns. So Nakamura said, well, I get my queen out of there. That wasn't good. Now, white has a lead in development. White has more space in the center. But unlike the other games we looked at, white's not overrunning black on the king side. Black's position looks more stable. Svidler gets the two bishops. They trade some pieces. Svidler gets more initiative on the queen side. Again, if I'm Nakamura, I'm not sure where to put my king. Now, what Nakamura did here, don't try it at home. Okay? These are professional chess players. You guys are amateurs. You can't play moves like this. King d7. Confusing the audience. Well, the king's pretty safe on d7. How's white going to get to it? Now, if white had a knight, white could play knight e5 and knight c5. And that would be good. Okay, so Svidler gets his rook into the game. Maybe he'll sacrifice on e6 soon. Okay, maybe he won't. b5. Svidler gets out of the pin with king f1. Didn't want his rook pinned. He moves a bishop back, so he puts pressure on c6. Like bishop f3, put more pressure on c6. Like bishop takes pawn, bishop takes pawn. White's got lots of threats. Rook c5. Svidler's hoping for pawn takes. Bishop takes b5, winning everything. Followed by d7. Damn. Tremendous pressure on c6. Now he plays b6. And he says, you can't move. Your queen's trapped. Your king's trapped. h5 is hanging. And basically in this position, Hikaru collapsed and lost everything. So I'm guessing at some point, white's going to play rook takes f5, e takes f5, queen takes f5 check. If the king moves, I play d7. If the rook goes to e6, I have bishop c4. So it doesn't look good for black. So he played bishop g6, preventing rook takes f5, queen f6, e5. He couldn't stand getting smushed, so he got some counterplay, or so he tried. Got a blockade going like Petrosian. Now it looks like white castled. White's position looks normal now, so white has these two extra pawns. Nakamura blocks the rook, so now he's threatening to take on e5. Queen takes h5, another pawn. Queen takes f7. Queen takes b7. And Nakamura's like, man, I'm down a lot of pawns. White's up 3 pawns, and black's king is on d6. White's king is perfectly safe, so Nakamura resigned. Then I wanted to finish the lecture with a black win because I was black. It's the only game I've ever had in the tall variation. I don't play the Caro-Kann often, and I've never faced h4 in this position. I played h5. Svidler played c4 in the last game. Bishop d3 is played by a lot of grandmasters. He played knight e2, knight g3, and basically white didn't get anything, and it was about equal. White didn't play aggressively enough, and trading queens is never something white accepts to do. White should play queen d2 here and knight c3 or b3. Yeah, queen b3. Black has no problem in this endgame. Now I have the open a file. My knight can go to f5. Bishop and knight have squares. And black's king is perfectly safe. My opponent was an FM, rated about 2300. And there's a brilliant move played in this game, which I will race to. In this position, if you take with a pawn, then obviously black's better. Black plays knight c4, and it's a very good knight against a very bad bishop and an isolated pawn and a backward pawn. So white took with the king. Rook c8. Now I'm threatening knight everywhere, discovered check, but mainly knight takes e5. Bishop b5 pins my knight. I said stop pinning my knight. So if he takes my knight, take with the rook, and then I infiltrate. He said, I'm going to pin your knight. And I was very insistent that he not pin my knight. And also always sacrifice the exchange. And this was the move of the game. I show this position to my students. Very few of them get it right. Black has one winning move here. Otherwise, the engine says it's equal. Can anybody watching in the live audience, especially my student, tell me what the winning move is here for black?
It's not knight takes e5?
It is not. But so you were correct, because you said it's not knight takes e5.
That's right.
It's not. Yeah. It's not a lot of moves. It's only one move. What do you think, Eric? You unmuted yourself.
Regret. Knight a5.
No, not knight a5. I like when my students can't find the answer, because that makes me feel better that I found the answer. Although I saw it 5 moves ago. But it's a puzzle that I'm stopping and showing you, so that means it's a move you wouldn't expect. It's not some boring move. You're like, wow, that move, I didn't see that. That's why I'm showing you. People on YouTube are furiously yelling the answer out at their home. Okay, the answer is knight takes d4 check. That move gives black about a +5 advantage. If king takes knight, white plays rook c4 check, checkmate with advantage. That's a funny checkmate in the endgame. So if he plays king b4, knight c2 check wins his bishop. Then I have 2 pieces and a pawn for a rook. So he played king d2, knight b3. His king has to defend his rook. He can't play king e1 or king d1, because then I'm up a piece. So he has to play king e2. Then I check. If he plays bishop d2, he loses all of his pieces. Man, truth hurts. And then white wonders where his pieces went. So he played. Oh, okay. Yeah. If he plays king f1, e1, or d1, knight takes rook again. So in this position, he played king e1, hoping I would take his rook, then he would take my rook. And by the way, black's completely winning here. But I have more than completely winning. I can play rook takes b2. Now I'm threatening his rook. And if his rook moves vertical, then I have rook b1 check and rook takes rook. So he can't do that. So he has to play rook d1, and his rook is trapped. Truth hurts. I'm winning material-wise anyway, but now I'm really winning. There's different kinds of winning. This is winning where everybody resigns. So that was my one time I faced the tall variation. I played h5 like Hikaru did, and I was the only one who was successful because this lecture's on a tall variation, so I showed white winning, but sometimes black wins. We just don't look at those games. Unless they're mine, then as the lecturer, I override everything. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Again, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Anonymous. If you want to sponsor a lecture, contact my wife, Karen. Her information's on the screen now. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. And I'll see you guys next time with more weekly lectures. Bye, everybody.